We appreciate the cooperation, the collaborativeness on this issue that is of concern to both houses of the legislature. The Supreme Court has primary responsibility for the state bar. They have primary regulatory power over attorneys under the Constitution and the doctrine of separation of powers. Attorneys are officers of the court. State Bar of California is part of the judicial branch. It functions as the administrative arm of the California Supreme Court in regard to admission to practice law and the discipline of those licensed to practice law. State Bar's most basic function is to protect California consumers who receive legal services. And in fact, that's where we share responsibility. We share responsibility because that's also the legislature's role, is to protect California's consumers. And thus, here we are today. Here we are today because we're concerned about whether or not we collectively are doing what's necessary to protect California's consumers. This issue, as you mentioned, Chair Manshine, the issue of discipline typically was of concern to very few Californians. 0.001% were concerned about attorney discipline. Basically, those attorneys who are being disciplined or not being disciplined. That has now changed. Because of the Girardi scandal and other attendant issues concerning discipline, maybe it's thankful to the housewives of Beverly Hills that this issue now has not just become of concern to a very small segment of California's population. Now when it's on the front page of the newspaper, now when it's on television, now when it becomes the subject of the housewives of Beverly Hills, Californians are asking all of us, what are you doing? What are you doing to protect California's consumers? As was mentioned by Chair Manshine, reports have come to everyone's attention as to Tom Girardi and the State Bar and that relationship. In the wake of the issues surrounding Mr. Girardi and his spouse, the State Bar hired an outside law firm to conduct an investigation to examine how the bar handled complaints filed against now disbarred attorney Girardi and whether the process was affected by Mr. Girardi's connections to the State Bar. I realize that we're looking backward. We're looking backwards, though, in order to create the reforms that are necessary so this doesn't happen again. I also recognize that, for example, Chair Duran is doing everything within his power to rectify that. And I recognize that the State Bar is now cognizant of the issues that basically Californians in the legislature are concerned about. It's clear, in my mind at least, that reforms are needed. Our goal today, along with the Assembly Judiciary Committee, is to gain a comprehensive understanding of what led to the failure of the bar and its discipline process as it relates to Tom Girardi, and I suspect others, and how to prevent something like that from happening again. Today we're going to hear from three different panels. The first panel addresses the harm that members of the public face when misconduct of attorneys is allowed to continue. The second panel will hear from the State Bar about what it's doing to address the issues raised by the Girardi scandal. And the last panel will address various proposals for reform. Let me turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.